I remember the first time that I was recognized. I was on 34th Street and 9th Avenue, right on the corner next to Penn Station. A bus goes by. I see, all the images of all the Top Chef cast, and people recognize me. And I'm like, I just couldn't believe this was my life.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rothbard. I'm thrilled to have Angelo Sosa finally on the show. Angelo is one of the most talented chefs I've gotten to know over the years, and currently he's the chef of two really interesting restaurants in Phoenix, Tia Carmen and Kambara. Angelo was also the runner-up of a season of Top Chef and has worked with some of the top names in the game, including Jean-Georges, Alain Ducasse, and Steven Starr. On this episode, we talk about Angelo's TV past and dig into his passion for Asian cuisine, including his deeply creative work with Thai, Vietnamese, and Chinese flavors and techniques at his latest opening, Kambara. I so love catching up with my friend Angelo and hope you enjoy this conversation. Angelo Sosa, welcome to This Is Taste. What's up, buddy?
Matt, how are you, my old friend?
It's good. We've known each other for about 15 years. It's kind of awesome to reconnect with you.
Oh, most definitely. When I heard your name pop up, it was just brought pure joy to me, and our love and affinity for Asian food and culture definitely, we have a connection there.
Completely, and I have to give you immense credit for helping kick off my personal journey in Korean cuisine. Back in 2011 or 2012, you had recommended me to help write a guidebook with my friend Nadia Cho, and you introduced us, and that was, listen, you are really to credit for this journey I've been on. So thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. You're most welcome.
Well, let's jump into your career. We'll definitely go and talk about Top Chef life and your time then, season 7, and we'll also talk about some of your journey and your travels. And it's just a remarkable story. Your time at Jean-Georges as well. But I really want to start off with your new restaurant, Kambara, which I had the pleasure of visiting in Phoenix. And this is truly, it's a terrific, ambitious restaurant in the full scale, and it represents your many interests in Asian cooking. And I got to spend time with your staff and talk about menu development, and it's just really a phenomenal restaurant. Phoenix is not the hotbed for cuisine in our country. Unfortunately, in terms of travel, people aren't traveling there, but they should. And I think you're really creating something special. And what does this restaurant represent for you?
Oh, wow. What a loaded question. First of all, we were so, enthralled to have you and your wife come and dine with us. It's really just a special weekend, and really motivated the team and staff just to have your culinary, acumen and your language and feedback. It was just really brilliant for us. So thank you. So what does this restaurant represent for me? First of all, Kambara is, we focus on Asian street food, right? From Japanese to Korean to Vietnamese to Thai, and then we have vignettes within that. So from, focusing on cuisine in Chiang Mai and khao soi curry. So it's really exciting. And what I'm so enthralled and just amped about is that we're making everything in-house, from our sambals to our curry paste to our noodles to our dim sum, and taking a staff that isn't necessarily familiar with this cuisine or even just hasn't even cooked this before, just to bring this, experience to the hotel and to the restaurant and to the team. For me, it's about elevating people's lives, elevating leaderships, and really doing something, provocative, in Arizona. And what I will say is Kambara represents, I would say my past, my present, and my future. My past, my love for Asian cookery. I spent a lot of time in Asia, prior to even doing research for Kambara, right? And I really credit Jean-Georges. You might have heard of that name before.
Yeah, he's a pretty good mentor of yours. I would say a pretty big name.
Most definitely. And I really just credit Jean-Georges for introducing me to Asian flavors, from the ginger to the lemongrass to galangal. And little did I know, working at his flagship restaurant for almost 4 years in New York City, I thought I had a good grasp of Asian food, but little did I know my first trip to Thailand, I really knew nothing. I saw different types of coriander, sawtooth coriander, laksa leaf, different types of gingers, krachai, fresh turmeric. And little did I know, my mind was just open to all these exciting flavors. And I will say this, like when I talk about the present of or even the past to the transformation of the present, I think about the provocative flavors of Asian cuisine, the sweet, the sour, the salty, the bitter, the umami, the astringent, right? And I think about these flavors, but I also think about them in the context of life, right? Like you can't have the sweet without the bitter. You can't have the bitter without the sweet or the sour, right? And my journey just hasn't been clear cut and beautiful. There's been a lot of resilience, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of
Yeah, man.
triumph and tribulations. But when I talk about my present and the future, it's just something I'm so proud to embrace essentially all of those
Yeah,
flavors.
it's really genuine, and when you sample your food, and I've been eating your food since Social Eats in New York City, and Anejo, and some of your restaurants that you were opening here, and they always had a similar mindset, which was extreme, like soigné, like really precise
Hmm.
execution,
Hmm.
creativity at the highest level, and also just a playfulness. Let me ask
Hmm.
you about Spice Market. You opened Spice Market with Jean George, which is a really like fundamental restaurant, foundational restaurant in New York City. Back in the day,
Hmm.
this was a restaurant that brought these flavors of Thailand and flavors of Vietnam to the
Hmm.
downtown crowd. John George is definitely somebody to acknowledge. You also worked at Budokan, and we'll get into that. But what was that like working under John George and opening this iconic restaurant?
Oh my gosh. I mean, Matt, to this day, it's probably, and I generally mean this, I probably think about working with Jean Georges at least, I'm not exaggerating, at least once a day. Whether I'm dreaming about my experience, whether I'm thinking about it, whether I'm thinking about his mantras of, their simplicity and excellence, I would say Jean Georges has the most profound effect on my life and my career. And just to work under his tutelage, I mean, what was beautiful, because I started at the flagship restaurant on Columbus Circle, what was beautiful when you thought that you were reaching your breaking point, little did you know that he always found a way, him and his team. I credit his chef de cuisine at the time, Greg Brainham. They really just pushed you to the next level. To the point of you just didn't even recognize yourself. So to be under that tutelage and in that environment, it just breeds you for the opportunity to get to the next level of your career. So I was just totally enthralled and honored and privileged to work
Mm.
under chef.
What were some opening dishes at Spice Market that come to mind when you're thinking about like taking these dishes that were created in Thailand and Vietnam that were very
Mhm.
historical, but then having
Yeah,
to reframe them in some way for a downtown and fine dining. And remember, this is a long time ago. It's like 15 years ago, right? And this is a time
right.
when Asian food didn't have the voice that it does
Yep,
today on the national
yep,
scale. I think we've really thankfully have
yeah,
evolved, and there's Asian chefs and Asian American chefs who are at the highest level. James
sure,
Beard Award was won by the team at Atomics, which is an incredible restaurant. They won the highest
sure.
award in New York, but it was different then. So that context is important. So what were some of the dishes that you were doing then?
Yeah, but let me just even start here. You're absolutely right. I feel like even today, Spice Market was one of the most iconic restaurants that I personally could think of because it's not like it was just Korean or just Japanese or just Chinese. It was a conglomerate of Thai, Vietnamese, Indian, a little Burmese, right? It was all this whole melange or
Hmm.
panache of different cultures and cuisines in one place. And I think that was just and still is kind of revolutionary, right? And when I think about those iconic dishes, and my mouth is literally like salivating right now, if you can see me,
Hmm.
but the spicy chicken wings, right, served with this beautiful sliced mango that was typically chilled on the side, so you have these fiery wings that are just so spicy, but they were like, I use the word like voluptuous. They
Yeah.
just had so much dynamic. And then you cool your palate with these beautiful chilled mangoes. It was just magical. And then you had dishes like the sashimi of tuna served in this coconut broth. So it was, a little spicy, a little fresh, a little, it was just all this. I just credit Jean Georges for just being so dimensional and so dynamic and so innovative in all that he does.
And so we kick it back to Kambara, and we're getting some of this instinct. We're getting, Malaysian fried rice with lime leaf and baby anchovies. We're getting chili crab. We're getting beef rendang with wagyu,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're getting this
Mm-hmm.
probably one of my favorite dishes I tried. You sent some dishes. There's a lot, but this was the one, the tuna Thai jewel, which is sashimi of tuna in a lemongrass
Mm-hmm.
broth that's chilled with kiwi and
Mm-hmm.
along the same lines of what you're saying about what you were, with those hot wings. It was definitely a refreshing element, an unexpected cooling element. I love it, and it was
Mm-hmm.
served tableside, poured over. And there's a level of presentation which I love, and certainly, listeners of our show, we don't see this a lot. Particularly in New York City, I don't see this cooking a lot. Auto Mix comes to mind. That's definitely one of the places that does those tableside tricks, which are part of a higher level of dining, and I just loved seeing it there at Kambara.
Mm, Yeah, well, thank you for that. And when we talk about the innovation of dishes and the creation of dishes, and this is really where I spend a lot of time. So, in creating the tuna dish, first and foremost, I traveled throughout. Specifically for Kambara, I traveled, to Japan, to Chiang Mai, to Penang, to Kuala Lumpur, to Malacca, to Singapore, right? And I was just tasting and taking in information. So the conception of this dish was, right, because I want to do something innovative and creative. So I was thinking a lot about the Thai imperial cuisine of the king and the queen and how ornate they dressed and opulent they dressed. And I thought about their jewelry and I thought about this dish of a Thai jewel. So when you go to Thailand, they typically have just coconut shaved ice with coconut milk. And then they have tapioca, fruits, and vegetables. And I was like, okay, how could I take the conception of this idea and make it a little bit more whimsical, add tuna with it? Then we add kiwi, Asian pear, shiso, Thai basil, and then pour with this beautiful Japanese style iron tea kettle, table side with this beautiful, fragrant lemongrass and galangal broth, and it bring this beautiful visual and textural experience to the guest.
Angela, I love that so much. The way that you talk about the precision and the thought that goes into it. And what's unique
Mm-hmm.
about Kambara and just your style of cooking, and I think this goes back to your time cooking in northern Spain, you are a test kitchen driven chef, which is cool. And to be
Mm-hmm.
clear, I want to talk about this a little bit. You aren't necessarily in the kitchen with all of your staff all the time. You're in a lab essentially creating recipes and really like coming up with the concept and the recipe to the gram on your own, and then eventually you bring it to a staff, you staff up, and then you train. This is like
Mm-hmm.
a Mugaritz model, which I know you've worked
Mm-hmm.
at.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is definitely something to talk about.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting, right? And I feel like seeds were planted back in the JG days, right?
Yeah.
Of menu development, right? A dish probably didn't go on the menu for about three. It had to go through a process of I'm just approximately 3 months. But what we do is one, first and foremost, we travel. My business partner and I travel. We, as I said, for Kambar, we specifically went to all of those countries that I mentioned. We went to Penang, Kuala Lumpur, Malacca, Chiang Mai, and we do deep, deep, deep dives into the food. So when we're in Chiang Mai, we literally had over 20 different versions of cow soy so that we could really understand what makes cow soy, what are the stories behind cow soy. And then I come back to the States. I go into a test kitchen here in San Diego. So this process for Kambara was about 3 months. And we just start with what are some concepts, like a concept, right? So a concept could be a Thai jewel, right? So what makes a Thai jewel a Thai jewel, or what makes a satay a satay? Like what are the key ingredients? And then how do we add thoughtfulness? How do we add innovation? And how do we be intentional where the guests it's familiar to them, but it's also something that could be new,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it goes through this process. So then we create the dish. A lot of these dishes will make anywhere from 3 to 7 times
Yeah.
to really think about it, because we also have to think about during the conception stage and the R&D stage, we have to think about it in production.
Yeah.
So if one dish takes 30 minutes to plate, is that a practical dish to have on a menu that we're doing high volume?
I mean, is it sometimes the case? Can you spend 30 minutes on plating? Is that possible?
Well, great example is the dish that we're talking about is the tuna Thai jewel. I mean, I would say without looking at the recipe right now, there's probably over only on the pickup itself,
Yeah.
there's 15 touches, right?
Yeah.
So there's things that I would say, mitigate that will, for example, instead of plating each herb, if I was in a 3 Michelin star restaurant, I'd plate each herb, by itself. But now we combine the herbs. So we essentially find ways to, without compromising the integrity of the dish and the ingredients, how do we minimize steps?
Man, there's so many cool. I love the Malaysian fish head curry, which
Ooh.
I think seeing that in the context of a JW Marriott, which has a great golf course, which has it's definitely not the place you're typically going to find a fish head curry, but when you eat it, you're like, wow, this takes me to this place that's far away from here. It's delicious. It's precise. I mean, I love that dish so much. I think fish offal is the greatest thing. Fish cheeks, you get a little bit of like
Mm,
fish brain in there, a little eyeball. I mean, it's like deep, intense
mm.
flavors. How are you thinking about serving that to like an audience of foodies and people who love cuisine? But then you got people come there for a convention or a
Sure.
golf outing. How do you split that difference?
Sure, sure, sure. I love the question. Thank you. Well, I think two things here. So we are going to have those fish curry dishes, right? Maybe might come across as, you know, I don't think it's going to be top of our pig mix of sellers, but what I do think that's very important to me is the level of staying in integrity
Yeah,
and staying within the vision of the concept and not compromising that integrity. Because at the end of the day, if somebody's really not into fish head curry and they want a chicken satay, they're going to have their chicken satay. And what I think is, if they love that chicken satay or they love our dim sum, I believe there's a relationship that's being, there's a connection, there's a level of trust being, coming to life. And then that's when I could easily walk over and I'd be like, hey, would you mind trying this? And maybe I don't present the fish head in itself, but I'll take a little bit of the broth and I'll let a guest taste it.
yeah,
So sometimes it is for people, but sometimes it's not. But that's okay because there's a dish for
I
everybody.
love it. Okay, this is the Top Chef portion of our interview. We're gonna talk. We're
Okay.
gonna go there, and you are an alum of Top Chef. You were on season 7 way
Mhm.
back. You were a runner-up, man. You like almost won that shit. You were very close to winning it. I'm sure at the time you were bummed, but now you're
Mhm.
doing so many cool things. My first question is, how did you get on the show, and how was the
Mm.
audition? I have Dale Talldale linked to that episode in the show notes. He talked about his audition when he was working at Budokan. What was your audition like?
Oh my gosh, you're bringing up. I got to go back, 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 back into my memory bank. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
rehashing these
let's go
memories.
there.
So, so at this point in my career, I couldn't even tell you a year, to be honest with you. So this was season 7. So just for the record, I did season 7, season 8, and I believe 17. So
Yeah.
I did the trilogy of the Top Chef experience, right? Um, so at this point in my career, I had, left Jean Georges. I had worked for Jean Georges for about 4 years. I spent some time with Alain Ducasse in Monaco
Mm,
and in Paris, and was very blessed to stage in Spain at some really good restaurants. Right. So Top Chef, in fact, reached out to me. Their casting crew reached out to me, and I was just like, okay, hey, I'm not really sure this makes sense. With my kind of my trajectory. I really think I kind of want to go down this avenue of like exploring more of the Michelin star. And I'm not sure if being on a reality TV, because at that point in time, reality television was somewhat new, right?
yeah.
So I kind of was very hesitant, to be honest with you. I give credit to, Magical Elves and Top Chefs. They were very persistent, I'll just say. And eventually, I think the competitive side of me was like, okay, like, hey, this does sound like an amazing opportunity. Imagine, Dale Talday. You mentioned Dale Talday. Like, imagine cooking with Dale Talday. Imagine cooking with Tiffany Derry. Imagine cooking with Carla Hall, to list some of my favorite people. Right? Like,
Mhm.
what an honor. Like, it's almost like going to like MIT or Harvard or Stanford for continuing education. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'm all in at this point in time.
Mm. Did they make you do anything in particular in an audition setting? Did they put you into a quick fire?
Oh no. Um, okay, this was my audition, right? Okay, I'm going to try to bullet this pretty quickly because I don't want to take an hour of your time. So at this point, they flew me out to LA. And previously to this, I did a Tony Robbins, an event, right? So I had like all my mantras down. So they're like, okay, Angelo, we're gonna come tomorrow morning. They obviously lock you in the hotel room, which you can't get out. I mean, I'm sure you could get out. But they're like, we're going to come tomorrow at 11 o'clock. So around 10:30, 10:15, I'm like, I got into my like Tony Robbins state of mind. I'm doing push-ups, I'm doing sit-ups. I walk into the bathroom and I'm like pumping on my chest. I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. 11 o'clock rolls around, nobody shows up. I'm like, okay, don't worry, George. Stay focused. State of mind. Everything's state of mind. 11:30 passes around. Okay, go back to the mirror. You can do this. You can do this. Anyways, I'm waiting. And essentially, 4 hours later, at this point in time, I'm on the couch, just chilling out, watching TV. I think it was like Judge Judy, and I'm just like, okay, they're not coming. When they knocked on the door, finally, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, can you give me 10 minutes? They're like, sure. Okay. Anyways, so I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. They bring us into this room. It takes about 20 minutes to get there, right? You have to jump through all these little hoops. I don't have my glasses on. I can't see, but all I see is about 15 to 20 people against a back room. The room is gigantic. I see a camera in the middle of the room with a chair, right? And a bottle of water. Okay, so I run in, I high five everybody. I don't even know what the heck comes over me. I sit on the chair, and I knew this was going to be the first question. And they're like, so why do you want to be on TV? So, yeah, granted, Matt, I could barely see them. Okay, I'm like nervous. All the Tony Robbins like mantras are out of my head. And I get up and I just start talking and I'm like, well, my voice is like really high pitched and it starts cracking. And I'm like, okay, this is not going well. So I literally stand up. I don't know what came over me. I stand up, I grab the bottle of water, I drink the bottle of water like I just ran like a 10K. It's like going everywhere. Like I'm totally drenched in it. I don't know what came over me. I took the chair, I flung the chair to the wall and I said, excuse me, what was the question? And I just got right back to that state of mind. And after that, I think it was a wrap.
So, Angelo, you get on the show. You clearly you're cast, but you're not like one of these competitors. And I haven't gone back and watched the episodes, but I remember it. You weren't one of these competitors who was going to go down quiet. You seemed, from my memory, and please correct me, but you were super competitive. Like you were definitely there to win. And let me ask you, did you know that you had this like killer instinct to win when you went and started doing the show?
So, are you saying I was a sniper? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, you weren't like a heel villain, but I think you probably were framed slightly as a heel villain at some point during the show, if I remember.
Well, let me put it this way, Matt. I'm not sure if it's my Dominican side, and I'm Dominican, and let's use the analogy, right? Like I played baseball my whole career, so I naturally competed. This is what I will say is on that platform of being on main stage in the kitchen, like I felt like I was just dreaming in real time, and to be competing with the Tiffany Derricks, the Kevin Spragas, the Dale Taldays, the Carla Halls, like all those amazing chefs that I love and adore. They bring out the best in you. So I don't know if I just consciously was aware of that. I was just like really focused in the moment. I almost was like on such a high that I was just so privileged to be there and competing. I think the other chefs, in fact, brought the best out of me.
Yeah, yeah. Back then, too, like just listener, this is no diss about the current chefs on the show. And listen, this show is as rated highly as now than it was back then, so more people love it. But back when you were doing it, they were recruiting from only the finest restaurants. Like literally, it had to be Budokan, John George, Per Se, Spago. Mm-hmm. It was like really high-end restaurants and really, 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 really technical chefs. And it's changed slightly. I feel you guys clearly were there to really compete at the highest level, and the cuisine was really high level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely. I mean, like I competed against Richard Blais, like just to like even like. That's why sometimes I would just like race and work really effectively and really quick is because I wanted to like pause and observe and like take in and be that sponge. Mm-hmm. I mean, to be honest with you, Matt, it was like rising tides. To be with the Richard Blaises of the world, the Tiffany Derricks, the Dale Taldays, it was like it was like continuing education.
So you end up getting second place, and that's like really nice. I mean, you didn't win, but man, you're like getting media, you're doing all sorts of things. What's life like after Top Chef? I mean, I've spoken, I know several cast members from different years, and the variance of experiences is really, really interesting. Some folks kind of flame out, some folks can become like professional chefs, some go into the private world. But, it must have been filled with like some super highs, but also some downs too. It's just like hard to come down from that.
Sure. It's a deep question.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you're honest too. I appreciate you're honest about this stuff.
Like, and that's really interesting because I talk about like my living legacy, and living legacy for me is also being transparent. Because if I could offer some sort of insight that supports somebody young and up and coming, or just going through anything in life, I think that's important to impart wisdom to them. But getting back to Top Chef, Matt, here's the deal. I grew up in a town, in Durham, Connecticut, a farming town. Grew up next to cornfields, chicken farms. We'd have milk delivered to our doors. So my town was of 5,000 people. I grew up in a very humble town. Like to be on the main stage, and I remember the first time that I was recognized. I was on 34th Street and Ninth Avenue, right on the corner next to Penn Station. A bus goes by. I see the Top Chef, all the images of all the Top Chef cast, and people recognize me. And I'm like looking at the bus, looking at the people. They're looking at me. They're looking at the bus. It was this exchange. And I was just like, I was overtaken with this sense of just humility. And I just couldn't believe this was my life. So being recognized and coming from a small town was just kind of like overwhelming for me. It was a blessing, but it was very overwhelming. And for me, it was very simple. Like people don't need to recognize me. They don't need to, support my journey or whatever. And they do. So for me, like each and every single person, if I had the time to sign an autograph or take a picture, I definitely did because I thought it was a blessing.
So, Angela, let's talk about the future. It's super exciting. I love that you're running Tia Carmen at the JW Marriott Desert Ridge. This is a restaurant that is very personal to you. And it sounds like you're going to open up some more concepts like that. I know Palm Springs is in the horizon, which is one of my favorite cities. I just like to get a sense of what your future holds.
Yeah, I'm super excited about my relationship with the JW Marriott in Phoenix. We have Tia Carmen. Tia Carmen really she's my Dominican Tia. She passed about 30 years ago. And she's really the reason why I'm cooking. I grew up in a very kind of disruptive, turbulent home, very militant home. And my Tia Carmen, on the flip side, showed me the passion, the love, the power that food could transform pain into love. So as a 9-year-old boy, I knew exactly, I wanted to be cooking the rest of my life if this is what love looks like, from just watching her cook and just the amazing energy and frequency that it really brought to people's lives. So moving forward, we have two beautiful projects in the Indian Wells or Coachella Valley area. We're opening up another Tia Carmen, and we're opening up a sister restaurant called Carmucha, which essentially is Tia Carmen's nickname because she was mucha. She was just so loving and so vivacious, and she always wanted to connect people and bring people into her home. So, honoring her namesake, we're opening a global tapas restaurant called Carmucha.
It's cool. I love the way that you think about local ingredients, which is a cliche at this point, but you really do think about it creatively when you're going back to your test kitchen in San Diego. The restaurant Tia Carmen in Phoenix was using a lot of Sonoran products and local products. Mm-hmm. You're going to do the same in Palm Springs, it sounds like. And I guess the locavore element to these two restaurants is important to you.
The localization's really critical and really important to me because behind, not to sound cliche, but behind the ingredient is the people. Behind the people are the stories. Behind, the stories is the community. So for me to weave all of those stories and all of the, to knit essentially this tapestry is very important. I want to be the conduit. I want to be the conduit of their voices and their stories, and bring their stories to life by the ingredients, right?
Wonderful. Angelo, on This Is Taste, we ask us about their certain taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire Fast and Furious taste check. Are you ready?
Let's do it, Matt.
The best breakfast food.
Oh, Lord. Okay, this one's pretty easy, especially just being in Asia not too long ago. I would say put yourself in Penang. You have roti canai, specifically mutton roti canai with a fried egg on top.
So agree on that one. Wow. Now, this is a hard one too. The best dessert.
Oh, Lord. Okay. This one's actually easy for me. Best dessert. I was in Tokyo. First meal that I had in Tokyo, the emperor's chef cooked for me a tasting, and for the dessert, he took a Japanese shaped ice machine. He had strawberries that were frozen in fresh made tofu. This was all frozen, and shaved it. And I felt I literally was in strawberry heaven.
Oh my goodness. Oh, strawberries there. Oh, so perfect.
Right?
Yeah, it is definitely something that is buried the lead about strawberries in Japan. Your favorite cookbook of all time?
Oh Lord. This is really tough. I'm not sure if it's because of my, with Kambara and just my head is there right now, but I would say, any books from David Thompson. He has a PhD in Thai gastronomy. I just love his approach. I love the the information and the deep dive into like, yeah, more the intellectual side, and obviously the recipes are gorgeous. So I would say David Thompson. I think the book is Asian Street Food would be my number
Great
one.
book. Real classic. Your favorite recent cookbook discovery?
Ooh, okay. I have an obsession here. And that's with African food. Like, really, I have a serious addiction here. So I have this beautiful cookbook. So my friend, actually, maybe you know her dad, Dawn Padmore, sent me some Nigerian food about a year and a half ago in Phoenix from New York, and I just fell in love with it. So this book is called My Everyday Lagos.
Yeah.
It just came out. I will be honest. I mean, the book is the cover is so stunning. It's so approachable. I haven't dived in deep into the recipes, but I'm so excited to get into this. I'm not going to even try to pronounce it, but the steamed grated cassava. It's almost like a tamale. It looks just magical. So I'm
It's a
so
great.
excited.
You went to Kamalafe. It's an amazing book, and I'm so glad that you've been exposed to that. And I'm sure the way you ingest information, the way you think about recipes, it's cool that you're going to embrace it and learn some stuff there. I love that book so much. Good call.
Super.
Your favorite city outside America to visit for food?
Oof. Does Mexico City count? Do you consider America?
100% no. No, that's a great. Why do you love Mexico City so much?
Why do I love Mexico City so much?
Yeah.
It's oh my God. First of all, the city's gorgeous. There's so much history. There's so much food history. It's just exciting, right? I love going to this restaurant. I love going to the markets, but I love going to this restaurant called Quintonil. I believe they're on San Pellegrino's list. I think it's just super phenomenal. And if you're gonna go, please sit at the chef's counter. Just watching them cook is just, I mean, you almost forget to eat. It's so engaging. But
Yeah,
Mexico City.
Quintonil has been a real interest of mine since I observed the food online on like a YouTube several years ago. It's a good call.
Well, maybe we'll go together.
It'd be fun.
We haven't been.
Yeah, we should hang in Mexico City. It'd be a good trip.
Oh my God.
Couple more. This is I feel like this could be a lot of answers, but a cuisine you would like to learn more about.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to say two, in fact. I mean, one, Middle Eastern, right? I love and I really gravitate towards, and we had this conversation in Phoenix, right? I think the element of freshness and the pure source of the ingredient really speaks to me. But I love this. I love like sumac. I love Aleppo pepper. I really want to dive much deeper into understanding. I mean, I think I know, but I'm sure there's better ways of how to work with meats and kebabs and balancing all these different flavors. I would really like to dive deeper. And I would also like to say African. They use a plethora of spices, and I really want to do a deeper dive in more so, even more the vegetarian and vegan cooking of African cuisine.
Is there a country or region of Africa? I'd like to get a sense of that because I'm going to follow up. I'd love to hear more about that.
The two would be, I mean, I'm going to go right for Nigerian cooking, and then I would see like, cuisine from Mozambique would really get me really excited.
Last one, your favorite sandwich?
Oh, this one's kind of simple. I'm going to be a simpleton here. Yeah, just a beautiful pastrami, cured properly, salted properly, spiced properly, with the most amazing pickle. Just keep it simple.
Full sour, half sour. What's a good pickle to you?
Ooh, I mean, if I'm going to eat it with pastrami, then I want full sour.
Agree.
I just need that contrast, and I think mustard's super important here. Yeah. So I want to get that, kind of that astringency of the mustard.
Angelo Sosa, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
You're welcome, Matt. Thank you so much.
Hey, Matt. how are you?
I'm great. This is good.
I'm gonna
We're
ask
keeping
that
this
again.
take. We're keeping this take. We're keeping this take. I think I'm great. We are catching up. It's nice to see you, Eliza.
It's nice to see you. We're catching up. I want to hear all about your trip to Phoenix because I've never been there before.
You've never been to Phoenix, really?
No, what is the state for Arizona? It's not the Sunshine State. It's the
The John McCain State? I don't know.
Oh God, the Snowbird State.
The Snowbird State is that what it's called?
No.
Listen, Arizona is maybe for me. I think of a lot of things with Arizona. I've heard there's natural beauty, up in Tucson, and there's deserts. It's a really beautiful, unique state.
The Grand Canyon State.
The Grand Canyon State. I'm glad you checked that out. I definitely had not been there ever, and I went there in December. And as you just heard from Angelo Sosa, I had a great meal at his restaurants and love Angelo. He's a really talented guy, and I just wanted to talk to you about some discoveries I had in Phoenix.
Yeah, I would love to hear about the kind of food that's around there.
It's a sprawly place. It's like the fourth or fifth largest city in America. I think that like some of the neighborhoods, like I went out to Mesa, and let me just kick it off there. I have a couple of places I wanted to call out. We were there for a couple of days, and weather was great, and I just got to really eat a lot of the food. But of course, so close to Mexico, the Mexican food is tremendous, and I got some pretty cool regional food. So out in Mesa, I went to Unos Tacos y Birria, which is a place that does birria, which I think is one of our shared favorite foods.
It is. I actually I had a good birria empanada recently.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there.
I would love to try that. But here, strip mall, birria, queso tacos, you can get consomme by like the court. Really nice stuff. And like Mesa is, there's a large Mexican American population there. And the food, I only got to go to one place, but I had a list of places in Mesa and I wanted to explore. So in Phoenix, there's a multitude of styles of cuisine. Mexican American population is massive there. I mean, Mesa is a Mexican American town, and I only got to go to one place, but I would love to spend 2 days or 3 days and explore that. And near like ASU, it has another vibe, and Tempe, and I think it's an interesting community of retirees and snowbirds in the winter, and obviously like long living Arizonans, and really a lot of people who love to play golf. Did
you play golf when you were there?
I love golf. I did not play any golf, but I went to a Suns game. That was cool.
And you ate, obviously.
So another restaurant, Tacos Chihuas, which was a Chihuahuan style taqueria. And I hit up Jose Relat, as I tend to do when I'm traveling, for his picks, and he gave me this right away. And I was not disappointed. I had an amazing beef cheek barbacoa, and I really like their signature tacos chihuas, which is loaded with carne asada, ham, hatch chili, jalapeno, and has this queso asadero spicy sauce. Chihuahuan cuisine, I still am trying to figure out what exactly it is, but I had some great tacos. Love that place.
Mm-hmm.
Another place I thought was good. I'm going to take a little break from the restaurants and give a really, really healthy shout out to Monsoon Market. Does that name ring a bell to you at all?
No. Is it like a natural food store? That's what I would think based on the name.
Definitely, kind of. I mean, it is a now, in my brain, legendary food shop, wine shop. I'd also say it has a shoppy shop vibe. Also, there's a cool dog there, which gives it lots of points in my book. I just loved hanging out there, and I saw there was a cooler of like locally made ice cream sandwiches, really well merchandised, and I thought that for a bottle shop this size, like with the footprint that wasn't that large, they had a lot of really interesting things happening in the space. And I've connected with them on Instagram, and 2 women run it, and I really just love what they're doing there.
That's cool. It's good to know that the natural wine movement has made its way everywhere.
Absolutely, it is. I think like you look at the shops around the world, of the country, like these specialty food stores, and I think Monsoon has like a really keen eye on what's happening in like, consumer products and cool young founders. And I saw a lot of brands I recognize there.
That's cool. So it's more of like a new school shoppy shop. Sometimes Monsoon Market as a name, I'm picturing like an OG 1960s health foods bulk bin store.
Totally. Like you think of it as like an old style place, but definitely no more modern, but also like a little bit of like punk rock feeling and like handwritten signs and like real curation. And again, a dog. How can you can't go wrong with
A shop dog, immediately over the top. I love
shop
that.
dog. So yeah, those are all highlights. I think ultimately, and I mentioned this in the interview with Angelo, my favorite meal in Phoenix was by far Kimbara, which is Angelo's restaurant at JW Marriott Desert Ridge. And, Angelo, and I contextualize this in the interview, but he is truly one of the most talented chefs I know, has a real scholarly attitude about the foods of Asia, specifically Southeast Asia. He spent a lot of time in Vietnam and in Malaysia and in Indonesia. He spent time traveling and studying, and I got to hang out with his staff and get to know him a little bit better through the food of Kimbara. But man, remember that name. It's a really good spot.
Yeah. Did you have a highlight from the meal?
I had many highlights. He's doing like a blend, as I mentioned, of Southeast Asian and East Asian dishes. And I have to say, man, what is a highlight? He did raw tuna in a broth of lemongrass ginger that was chilled with kiwi jicama Thai basil. And, it had this is a Thai. This is all a Thai dish. And it felt like the way he did the pearls of raw tuna, really outstanding presentation. I thought, he's the kind of guy who really, really conceptualizes dishes outside of his restaurant and then brings them back and then executes them with his staff. It's a real John George kind of method, which is where he worked and trained under. He was the opening chef, one of the opening chefs at Spice Market down in the Meatpacking District. Lamb spring rolls with coriander and crema. I mean, come on.
Like a fried spring roll?
Yeah, exactly.
Yum.
He had khao soi that I thought is as good as any I've ever had. Malaysian crab fried rice, a Thai fish head curry, a Wagyu rendang. I mean, it's like really ambitious. And honestly, I hope the Phoenix population knows what they have because it's really a tremendous restaurant and Angelo is one of our top talents. So that really capped the whole visit to Phoenix. And I hope to go through there maybe on my book tour next year. I loved it. I thought it was a great trip.
Well, I'm so glad you had a good time. And now I have a list of places to go.
Yeah, I hope you can go there. I appreciate it. This is Taste is hosted by Eliza Abarbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is produced by Shalia Harris and Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates on all cool things that are happening.